Alrighty, we are back for a regular episode. Finally, I know it's been a couple of crazy weeks. I was out of town. You were out of town.
Yep.
Everybody was out of town. So
Everybody's traveling.
A lot of stuff going on. Just a lot of craziness, honestly, going on. I sort of swapped out some weeks and like put some bonus episodes up for the regular episodes. I was starting to get confused. I'm like, what are you doing this week? What's this week? Okay. But yes, back with a new episode. And we are going to be covering some pharmaceutical companies and their skeletons in their closet, especially like the old standing ones, the ones that have been around for a long time. But more on that in a second. Just do a little housekeeping. Well, you need to tell us about what happened at hockey because we have some hockey fans.
Oh, yeah. So I play street hockey and ice hockey around here. And I got my first career hat trick on ice last Sunday. Yay!
Good job.
So thank you.
Yeah, you guys like won the championship recently, right? Or the
last season? Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, no, it's been 6 years almost in the making. So
yeah,
finally happened.
See, hard work, patience,
determination, you know.
Yes. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Honestly, best time it could happen too.
Right.
So, but
this is my year.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
When like everybody would say that and then like the year would be crazy and they're like, wait a minute, no.
Just kidding.
I take it back.
Right.
But yeah, we're actually going out of town again this weekend to, which I'm hoping it'll be more restful. We'll see how that goes. Because I mean, you know, when you're going away with your kids, it's like you're still parenting, but it's like you hope that it's just a little more restful. Different location, right? Different scenery.
Right. There you go.
Which could or could not be good news. So we'll see how that goes. But I am looking forward to spending some time with the fam a little bit. I do want to just mention our Patreon once again. We do have our Patreon. It's been up and running for a while. And if you go to it, you can become a free member. There's some chatting that goes on in there too, some fun conversations to be a part of. And there's also a $1 tier where you can get bonus episodes each week. I do bonus episodes on anything relating to poison, or it could be related to a regular episode that we're doing. Like it could be related to it in honestly the most random way sometimes. And I'm like, I want to talk about that. But it's usually kind of in line with the rest of the stuff we talk about, you know. Also with the $1 tier, it starts with the Discord. So you get like there's a link in there. You can join the Discord. A lot of fun conversations in there from like typical life stuff, poison stuff, episodes that we talk about. We've got the Neuromix chat group in there too, where we just talk about like all things neurodivergent, you know, autism, OCD, ADHD, just stuff you might be struggling with, you know, or maybe memes you just feel like posting, want to share with people. It's fun to just kind of see what everybody's talking about and you know, offer support in that way. There's also a place to put pets. Just post your pets because pets are fun. And then there's two $3 tiers because one of them used to be a $5 tier and I brought it back because anyway, there's the reason there's two $3 tiers is because Patreon wouldn't let me like mesh them together. So now there's just two $3 tiers, but they're the same thing. You get all of that. Plus you get the Neuromix chats that me and Adam do each month and the Poison in the News segments that we also do each month where we talk about all things going on in the world right now. Poison, disease, and then things like that. And I do want to mention that even at the $1 tier and up, we do shout you guys out here, and I'm going to bring up my notes to do that so we can take care of that because I want to call you guys out and show our appreciation. So we have Nicole Crane, Brett Moser, Lynn Rocket, Ogre the Viking, Maggie's Yarm, Maya Showstock, Sasha Rubel, Nicole Rivers, Wooly Wolfenzy, Liz Bianchini, Dixie Painter, James Mills, Bobby Sue, Amanda B., Mara Santiago, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nevesha Treats, Jay Went, Inken Hafner, Kiri Yorsak, Kate Lininen, Robert Jr., Jessica Gasparini, Soy Kasumi, Thomas Huff, Glow and Go, Julia Frenzoni, Lady Digitalis, which the Digitalis, you know, they're blooming now, you know. Well, they've been blooming, honestly, for a couple of months, but I love that plant. Leah Marie Matson, Abby, Supergirl Sway, Creative Otter, Dizzy Dancer, Mr. Slaved, The Warp Witch, Dalek Party, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Desiree Davis, Melissa Emmel, Lynn Simpson, Aaron Carey, Kristen Arnold, Rynell Alara, Oma D, Bonnie, Christian Scratergard, Prim Risen, Stuart Slattery, Minnesota SPT, Pungrammed 101, Caitlin Martin, Wendy Goldstone, 2 Fidgety, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Old Man Clyde, Anna Maria, Vix, Blau Frosch, Morgan Brittingham, Christine Muljadi, Pterosaurus Hex, Estar, Knitting Ninja, Sarah G, Jefferson Vargas, Donna Lanchinese, Lauren Smith, Banana, Serpentine Fire, Melanie the SLP, Stuart Lee, Chris Milanek, Libby, Hetty, Hantapalooza, Lisa MN, aka Schmutz, Kelsey H, Paper Sky, Hannah Cook, Campasar, Britt Clark, Paris Langer, Andrea Shameless Agitator, Ruby Salazar, Cassandra Smiles, Daniel Soar, Jasmine, Dr. Doom, Maureen Hart, Justin Higgins, Nigel Hawkins, Judy Lowe, Seamus Pict, Lisa DW, Lashia Paris, Jessica Pollard, or Jessie Pollard. I don't know why I did your full government name there. I'm sorry. Jessie Pollard. Forgive me. Sarah, Jahira, Everyday Delirium, April, Alicia, Melafantastico, Panda Cannoli, Amber Golder, Donna Foley, Michelle Carnitz, Teeth Weir 5, Natsamaya Terran, Tater the Gator, Hannah Rose, Sherlock and Watson, Ragdoll Cats, Nozamika, Michelle with the 1L, Catherine, Go to Bed Frazier, Brittany, Lisa Fagan, Haplo84, Anna Kittalong, Will, or AK Dubs, Iduna XXX, Megan Geiger. It's a Geiger counter, you know, like with the... I want a Geiger counter, but then again, I kind of don't, because like, what if yeah, you get me. Alien Golding, Lucy Galloway, Toby Marie, Shelby Knowles. So we've got some new patrons in there. Thank you guys so much for all your support, and for just all of you listening. Thank you so much for being here, because we appreciate you guys all so much. And with that, I did promise our patrons some deep dives into these pharmaceutical companies. And the first one that was mentioned, the first one that was suggested, was Johnson & Johnson, J&J. Yep. And they have been around for a long time. So we're going to cover a little bit of their history and then talk about when things started to go bad. We're going to be covering just some of their most problematic products, histories, the way they've handled things like that. And it's going to take a couple of episodes. I'm thinking 2. We'll see how it goes. You know me. Yep. Now, I've written notes basically for 1.5 right here. So that's how I know it's definitely going to be 2. But there's just a lot going on. There's a lot of back and forth over the years between Johnson & Johnson, federal agencies, just a lot of stuff to get through. So yeah. And they, like I said, they're a very old company, and they were a family company.
All I can think about when I hear that name Johnson & Johnson is like the baby shampoo, the like no tear or whatever.
Good, yeah. And it's good that you bring that up. I'm getting a lot of this information from a book called No Tears. Actually, let me actually pull it up so I can tell you guys the author, the author. No More Tears, excuse me. Mm-hmm. It was like, excuse you, that's wrong. No More Tears, No More Tears. And the book, it's funny. It's got like a picture of like their bottle of
that orange
baby
bottle
powder. Well, it's like a white, old school
baby powder. Sorry.
Yeah, the old school baby powder bottle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's No More Tears: The Dark Secrets of Johnson & Johnson by Gardner Harris, who I believe is a pharmaceutical reporter for the New York Times. So a lot of good stuff in here. So. But that's where I'm getting a lot of our information from, that and just different sites like online, whether it's like history found in like the FDA and stuff like that. So, yeah. So, yeah, just letting you guys know. But that is the whole idea of them being a baby company, it's a big deal we're going to talk about. So, and in the future, we are going to cover some others, you know, Merck, Bayer, Pfizer, the big boys of pharmaceuticals, if you will.
Oh, what was the other one during COVID?
Is it Moderna?
Yes, that's the one. I was trying to think. I was like, it starts with an M, but I
honestly, I
couldn't remember.
I honestly didn't know much about Moderna until
COVID.
Yeah, because you hear about like a lot of the older ones, but I'm sure I can look into them too. I'm trying to figure out when they were actually founded. They were founded in 2010, so they don't have as much of a history, but I'll still take a look at them.
Unless change names.
They could have, yeah. And there have been some acquisitions within the pharmaceutical world. Yeah. A lot of times they don't change the name of products because if they're well known enough, then they won't,
But if there's enough skeletons in the closet. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I don't know.
Look, so some of the stuff we're going to go over today is pretty rough. Yeah. So, at least in terms of business practice, that kind of thing. So, and it starts with something pretty innocent.
Okay.
So, but Johnson & Johnson, they've cemented their reputation as this family company. And it started as these three brothers, so it is a family company eventually making family products and becoming this whole, we're a family company. You always see like the little pictures of babies, little innocent babies on their products. And, but they didn't start making baby products. They had other things going on too.
Oh, yeah.
And they also have they have like baby powder. There's adults, adults use these products too on themselves for different reasons. And the marketing is specifically towards how gentle it all is, right? Like, it's so gentle, babies can use it. Like it's gentle, it's so safe, it's trusted by families in all stages, basically. And it's had this reputation for a long, long time. Now, marketing is a key part of this episode. And I think you'll find that interesting too as a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've worked, you've helped to make, websites and stuff like that. Like you help with the marketing of a lot of these places. Stuff, it gets kind of interesting on that side of things too, because trust can really be easily built with these consistent promises, cute pictures of babies, apparently, puppies, like think of all of the brands that have like cute, fluffy critters. Right?
Yeah. You can trust them.
Yeah. Like who wouldn't trust you? Look at it. Anyway, it's usually a red flag. I'm just kidding. Not all of it's a red flag, but I'm just saying.
Just make sure you look into it, right?
Yeah. You should always look into what you're buying anyway and what you're using, because just to be safe.
Yep.
Now, this is, marketing is also a tactic to sell products. You know what I mean? Like it just is. So unfortunately, just because a product is advertised to the public as safe and effective, companies may choose to leave out some information if they can get away with it. Now this, I feel like a lot of right now since 2020, at least, there have been a lot of like lawsuits against various companies. I feel like it is getting harder to hide the kind of stuff they used to hide a lot of, but it still can be done through just, bribes and just criminal means. But even that can be found out a little bit easier than it used to. So at least there's that. But yeah, so many companies, they like to use these different advertising tactics, just look at the cute little baby, look at him smile, everything's fine. There is no war in Bossing Say, right? And that'll also make sense in a moment, because it's basically what Johnson & Johnson says about some of their products. Not about war being in Bossing Say, but about stuff being in their stuff.
Yeah.
Now, another important part of the history here is the FDA and its history. Now, the FDA, which we've covered to some degree in our episode on the historic allowances of poisons and foods and tonics and all, it had limited authority in its earlier years. Its budget was, and still is, honestly, often short as well. So instead of erring on the side of caution, a lot of the time they might advise, then also let an issue go. And it also depends on who's leading that particular agency. Politics is involved, which is pretty rotten a lot of the time. So it depends more. A lot of times these regulatory agencies depend more on politics and money than they do on actually regulating products for safety and effectiveness, which is not right.
Yeah.
But here we are. But without the money to properly regulate billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies, they were more like this annoying fly being swat at before they had any authority, really, than a formidable presence enforcing safe practices. So we'll cover their role or lack thereof as well in some of this too. And I won't be taking any blame off of them either, because while in some cases they did have the authority or budget to stop some of this mess, but then they kept making excuses when there was also leaders in the agency that just didn't care too, or they were like on the side of, they were getting paid under the table, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now let's start with a bit of early history on J&J. The company was found in 1886 by three brothers, Robert Wood Johnson, James Wood Johnson, and Edward Mead Johnson. So Robert Johnson started out as a pharmaceutical apprentice when he was 16 at an apothecary run by his mother's cousin. He started his own company with a chemist and this pharmacist named George J. Seabury in 1873, and they sold medicated plasters, which now we have like bandages and stuff. Back then they just plasters. While promoting the business at the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia in 1876, kind of like the World Fair, but over here in this area, he heard Dr. Joseph Lister talk about antiseptic surgery, which Lister had pioneered, to be honest. Lister was brilliant. He's known as the father of modern surgery, thanks to his work in making it safer by researching how germs cause infections. And like beforehand, like doctors would literally just go from working on cadavers to delivering babies without washing hands. Like they would just go, you don't have to wash your hands. It's fine. There's no such thing as germs can't just jump on you and jump on somebody else. There's no such thing, right? To them, it was like, that just wasn't a thing. When it did start to be thought about or taught, they would see it as, that's weird. That can't be real. They were like, no, you're crazy. Turns out, yeah, germs do exist. So, but
they're there. You just can't see them.
But Joseph Lister was brilliant at research and really seeing how germs can cause infection. He taught the ideas and methods of sterilizing surgical equipment, sterilizing patients' skin, sutures, hands, like before going into surgery, whole patient wards even, to prevent infections. People died a lot from infection. So it's thanks to him that post-surgical infections significantly reduced beginning in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So bravo to him. Yay. Now, Robert Johnson got to hear him live and was inspired by his lecture there. And when he parted ways with Seabury, his first business partner in 1885, he kind of took this info, with him for later. Now, a year later in 1886, Robert joined his brothers James Johnson and Edward Johnson in creating a line of ready-to-use sterile surgical dressings. And it was that year that the company Johnson & Johnson was founded. They had 14 employees at first. There was 8 women, 6 men. And the first factory was located in the old Janeway and Carpenter building on Nielsen Street in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Now, his brothers had actually worked in the first business with Seabury, he had brought them on or whatever, and they had just kind of decided things weren't going very well with Seabury. And once they left, he was like, hey, let's just start this business together.
Yeah.
So there's some more stuff to it, but I'm just going through the history briefly. So they started out manufacturing sterile surgical supplies, household products. Band-Aids would come along later in 1920. And medical guides with Robert Johnson as their first president, of their company. So, it's so sweet. But unfortunately, things get less sweet. Before we come to that, let's go forward a few years. Now, the company did continue to grow. They were honestly really great for some time. The company recruited and hired a successful advertising agent and a well-known pharmacist of the day as well. His name was Dr. Fred Kilmer. And Dr. Kilmer was also a pretty good author. He had previously written this book that explained pharmaceutical products, including some Johnson & Johnson products that were there, and also gave instructions on how to use them. Now, it was reportedly very popular. I guess moms especially would consult it at home and, things like that. He would go on to write more successful manuals afterwards, too. So Robert Wood Johnson II was slated to become the president after his father, who ended up dying in 1910. But Robert II was only 16 years old at that time. So his uncle James, Robert's brother, served as temporarily the president. Yeah. Now, Robert II, I'm just going to keep calling him that because it's easier, had a complicated childhood. Junior. Yeah, Robert Jr. I don't know why they didn't just say Junior. It just says Robert II. Yeah. Anyway.
We can refer to him as Junior. We'll know.
Junior. But he had a complicated childhood and some difficulties in his young adult years. He struggled with school early on, coped with the loss of his father, among other issues, by drinking heavily and partying and things like that. Just how he, I guess, coped with it. He had a hard time staying in school. He found no interest in it. I think Robert Jr. was neurodivergent in some way. He really struggled to just be there. He wanted to be working, and school's not for everybody anyway. That's just, just how it is, especially the way it's designed. I mean, especially today with all the standardized testing and stuff, not everybody is just good at testing, so I feel like it doesn't really serve everybody the same way, but let's see. Now, an ultimatum was given by his uncle. He basically said if he didn't straighten up, he was going to sell the company. And no more, future for you at all. So, but this ultimatum basically turned him around just before his 21st birthday. He was basically a changed man overnight by some witness accounts. And he would go on to not only lead the company well, but also prioritize his workers during some pretty hard times. Yeah. During various wars, you got World War I and beyond, really, and disasters. This includes the Galveston hurricane, which was awful. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake, both were devastating disasters. The company provided and donated necessary healthcare supplies. Now, Robert Johnson Jr. was a writer as well as company president by this time. He wrote a letter to President FDR during the Depression, calling for a federal law to raise wages and reduce working hours for all American workers. And this isn't something that was really even thought about by other employers. Personally, the company retained all of its workers, like no one lost their jobs during that time, and they even raised their wages by 5%, which is a very honorable thing to do. It's a very hard time for people. Now, Johnson wrote and distributed Try Reality, a discussion of hours, wages, and the industrial future, to persuade other business leaders to follow his lead, advocating that business is more than profit and that companies have responsibilities to consumers, employees, and society. Now, part of this document would go on to become the company's credo, and I'll read you some of that a little bit later. But he also published Or Forfeit Freedom in 1947, encouraging businesses to develop sustainable methods of using natural resources for the future of business and the planet as a whole. So it's kind of ahead of his time, really, in a lot of this stuff. Now, during World War II, all workers who were drafted or enlisted, men and women, were promised that they would still have their jobs when they returned. Now, women actually represented half of their workforce, which was different, for the time. And they were also in leadership in the company early on. That's pretty huge for their time. He also worked to gain passage of a policy that ensured U.S. factories with under 500 employees being awarded government contracts. So he's kind of helping look out for the smaller business as well, like making sure they don't get sort of run over. Now, one thing Robert Johnson Jr. was especially known for by those close to him and those who worked with him was his obsession with cleanliness, which is interesting, like compared to his earlier years. He's just like drinking and partying and like,
that's probably not clean.
So I don't know, maybe this became like his newest way of coping. I'm not sure, but he was not content at all with the state of typical industrial factories, as they were often filthy, as you can imagine, disorganized and unkempt. I mean, factories today, like I know they have to go by certain standards, but you walk into some factories today and they're not exactly the cleanest thing you've ever seen. Now, as a way to show his standards of cleanliness and orderliness, he actually designed and commissioned this textile company community in Gainesville, Georgia, where 200 employee homes, some of these homes were the first with indoor plumbing, hot water, and electricity, were built near the mill itself. This community also included several churches, a grade school, and a medical facility. The community was clean and order was basically established. Floors and stairwells were painted white so dirt and dust could be noticed easily, and windows were expected to be pristine. I mean, he would drive by, and if he noticed even the windows were off, he'd have to stop and make sure.
We got to clean this.
So, he had this whole little town to sort of as a standard of, we must have order, right? That sounded very Umbridge of me.
It did.
So. Yeah, but even the power lines were buried so that they would not be visible. He made inspection trips to various facilities. He would fix any messes, advise employees on changes that were needed. He wanted to have the company looking and, making sure it looked professional and clean. And I mean, honestly, though, like I would want the company making my health supplies to be clean too. So I guess that's, obviously cool.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as you can tell from everything I've already said, his ethics were as clean as his company's floors, to be honest. He wanted to look out for small businesses. He wanted to help his employees and stuff. And he had been pushed more than once by the company's executives to get into the pharmaceutical business because it was kind of picking up and taking off. And basically in terms of making and selling medications, because they were already doing like bandages and stuff. Even so, he actually refused to do this for some time because he'd seen how the industry was like historically with fraud and poison scandals, which, or just your snake, what is it? The snake oil salesman and all that. Yeah, which we've definitely talked about some of that too in the past. But he finally agreed to their wishes in the 1950s under the condition that the drugs in question were legitimate and a good fit for the company. Now, Johnson & Johnson later bought the smaller companies responsible for the making of Tylenol, which would be McNeil, and Haldol and fentanyl, which would have been Janssen. And I feel like Janssen, the name is still familiar with some people. Yeah, so 2 years later, Tylenol was approved by the FDA as an over-the-counter medication. And we're going to talk about Tylenol in our next episode because there was some stuff to do with that as well. Not autism. Tylenol does not cause autism. Other stuff that we need to talk about with how they handled some stuff. And this was huge, as we now know, given the popularity of Tylenol. Like, it was a big thing. Now, the list of drugs grew exponentially from these two acquired firms, and business just boomed. Janssen alone created like 70 different compounds, and which became commercial medicines. And 5 of these were added to the World Health Organization list of essential drugs over time.
Nice.
So, pretty
doing stuff to help.
Yeah, pretty good thing going on here. Now, I've sung Robert Johnson II's, Jr.'s, whatever's praises so far. So let me tell you one of his biggest failures. I knew I'd find one somewhere.
Just had to do a little digging.
He sucked as a father. He was a terrible dad.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
His son, Bobby Johnson, was only 8 years old when his father divorced his mother. He was not there much as a parent, some saying that the family chauffeur played the role better than he had. Still, he named Bobby the president at the height of Johnson & Johnson's drug business success. And the son wanted to make his father proud. Like, I'm guessing he just kind of said, guess what, you're president now. Like, I don't know if he even tried to sort of help him in or understand what that looked like in terms of the role itself. But he did have him he worked various jobs at the company because he wanted to make his father proud. So he started off kind of there, even though he was given this title. He graduated from an exclusive private school. He spent 2 years at college. He enlisted in the Army, served in World War II, and became a sergeant. When he came back, he got married, had some kids. I mean, he seemed pretty successful, more so than his father had at a younger age. Who had really had a hard time even staying in school. And then, and I'm not saying that's his fault, maybe he had something going on, and also was like drinking and partying. It's just weird that his father goes on to treat him so poorly and judges him and stuff like he does.
Yeah.
But Bobby was younger. He wanted the company to advance with the times. He hired marketing executives. He had a secretary kind of wherever he went. And his father just found this to be like non-traditional, I guess. And like, this is weird. Like, I don't like that you're doing this.
This is different.
Yeah. So he just really gave him a hard time over a lot of stuff, even though he'd been pretty successful as a human. I mean, and where he was, he's trying, he's doing his best to really prove himself.
Yeah.
Now, Bobby also gained a good amount of weight, and his father demeaned him for this pretty heavily because Robert Jr. was not just obsessive with, order and business. He would even with his appearance, he was this way, and he would actually make his employees wear like white, and like they had to be spotless and professional, But Bobby was not as obsessive with order as his father was, obviously. So the father, Robert Jr., was super thin. He would even weigh himself with this special scale, which would record like any minute change in weight down to the ounce. Like, he was obsessive about it.
Yeah.
And, and the rest of his physical appearance as well. Those around him actually had to be dressed according to his standards, like I mentioned, but Bobby was more of a casual dresser, if you will. And, he's younger. The times are changing. Like, this is just a different generation as well. And I'm not saying he was dressing sloppily, but apparently his father thought so.
Yeah.
Now, his father had once declared that a disorderly plant is a symptom of confused management, which it's like, let's not forget the man was living how he was living in his late teens and 20s or early 20s, and he had to kind of change or the place would be sold. It's like he's not thinking about the stuff that he went through or, any flaws of his own, but he's looking at his son and being like, everything is wrong. Right. He's not me, so everything is wrong. But obviously, Robert Johnson Jr. and his son Bobby, they were just different people, and they did not get along. And Bobby at least tried, but his father he was a controlling and obsessive ass to him, to be frank. Like, he was just not a nice guy to him. And it's like, where was his empathy now? He had led this business with values, supporting his workers in the hardest of times, but he was this disgusted, bitter old man to his own son. Like, it's just weird. But when Robert Johnson Jr.'s health began to worsen, he actually turned around and made an employee who had started there like as a shipping clerk. His name was Philip Hoffman. He actually named him his successor.
Really?
As chief executive and chairman, while basically demoting Bobby, his son, to vice chairman of the executive committee. And it wasn't because like he had tried and he was doing well, I think, work-wise, but like because of his weight and or because of the way he dressed and just his things he just disagreed with him on.
Yeah.
He just was really not nice to him. And then he didn't even deliver this news to Bobby himself.
Oh.
He had others do it.
Yikes.
Thanks, Dad. And now Bobby, he was obviously disappointed, but he stayed loyal to his father and the company. He even wrote him a letter like, I don't agree with this, but, And then his father also made him get help for his weight. Like he just kept pushing that matter. Yeah. And, I get it. Like if someone is having health issues and they need help for that, but like, it's like, did he ever stop to consider that maybe he's kind of part of his son's depression and maybe he's gaining weight from that too? You know what I mean? Like there could be other things going on, but he's just constantly demeaning and all this stuff to him.
Making the situation worse almost.
Right. And so he actually took a break and lost 30 pounds, Bobby did, which did help him with some health issues. I think he had like an ulcer or whatever. And when he came back, his father actually still made it clear to other executives that Bobby just wasn't welcome back. So Bobby resigned via a justifiably angry letter in May of 1964 at 45 years of age. Robert Johnson Jr., the second, whatever you want to call him, would be the last in the family to lead the company, basically. So, yeah. And this is when what seems to be the good old days for J&J would end. So, starts with
it should have stayed with the family, huh?
Yeah, and, here we are. So, let's get into some specific products, if I can say specific correctly, that is. Some specific products, because the troubles do actually start in the most innocent of places. Johnson & Johnson first began selling their famous baby powder in 1894, which is a long time, is the first of their eventual line of baby products, like more baby products. And this really came about after a doctor had written in 1890 to the company to report that one of his patients had complained that their skin had become irritated after using one of their medicated plasters, Having heard the complaint before, Dr. Kilmer, this was the pharmacist / writer who wrote those manuals who had been recruited earlier on, he sent this doctor a can of Italian talc, instructing him to give it to the patient as it would suit the skin. Let's see. Now, the company soon decided to start including small cans of talc with every order of certain medicated plasters. It became so popular that customers just wanted, refills of the powder, itself. So others especially had noticed that it was a great remedy for diaper rash. Now, this was just the sign of a great opportunity. So, Johnson & Johnson started their baby powder product, basically, and started just selling that too. Now, by 1911, Johnson & Johnson was producing 90% of the sterile cotton, gauze, and bandages sold throughout the world. So that's pretty
significant.
Yeah, I was like, wow. They were internationally known and loved, and, even apart from the baby powder, like they were known for their stuff. Now, after World War I and then the Spanish flu epidemic, which was honestly wild itself, the company began to consider the products that would continue to sell beyond a time of crisis. I'm sure they didn't know like World War II was about to come on too. So, no one could have predicted that, I guess. But they were like, okay, well, when this war ends and when this pandemic ends, like, what are we going to sell after that that's going to be popular enough to keep us going? And one of these things would be like baby powder, right? Like stuff that you can use at home. In 1918, they launched this huge advertising campaign for the talc-based powder, and they were soon after the baby company. Like they started calling themselves the baby company. And so they were kind of tied to that level of trust that came with that, With the success of this campaign, they began to manufacture further products aimed towards babies and young families, which makes sense. They were not the only makers of baby powder when it was at its most popular, but they were the first to mass produce and market it and sell it, and the longest to keep a certain ingredient in it than some other products. Talc. Now, there is a reason why when you buy something cosmetic in powder form, you may see a disclaimer saying it's talc free. Like they're like saying, hey, look, we are talc free. Look at us. Yay, yes, yay. Or something similar, right? Now, not everything today is talc free. There is still talc available, but it has to have shown that it is not contaminated or toxic like it used to be.
Yeah.
We'll kind of come over that in just a little bit, but talc is a natural mineral. It's mainly made up of magnesium, silica, water, and it's gathered in, mines underground, like, not too deep, but they mine it underground. It's known as soapstone when it's in blocks, and it's formed, in the earth under high heat pressure, which many minerals are. Now, as soapstone, when it's in this block form, it's used to make stoves, sinks, countertops, etc. When mined to be used for talcum powder, the rock is crushed, milled, and purified to produce this very soft, very fine white powder that's been used in ceramics, paints, paper, electrical cables, plastics, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, baby powder. It's been used on like latex gloves or balloons, even like kids' balloons, like the powdery stuff. They used to use that. So, let's see, it was actually used in cosmetics long before the Johnson brothers existed. It wasn't like they were selling baby powder, but it's like they still used this particular mineral. Ancient Egyptians used it in makeup, like eyeshadows and things like that. Later, in a lot of Asian countries, it became common in skin lightening agents, as this rather controversial standard of trying to make one's skin whiter or lighter in color arose and gained popularity. It's super it's looking back, you can tell now why it's controversial. It's like they were trying to, I think, westernize this look, and it was taking away from their own individuality, their own beauty, and like companies were building this standard of look like these people, look you look more white to be pretty. No, but so there for a long time, and still there are still some people who use these things. There were these skin lightening agents. And so talc was also involved in that. Now, women in the late 1800s and early to mid 1900s would use it to heal their baby's diaper rashes. They would also use it on their own private areas, the perineal area, even like thighs, under the breasts and things like that, to help chafing, or even as a deodorizer, because they started adding scent to it by this time. If parents are using the powder each time they change a diaper, there's you notice, I'm sure you've seen baby powder before, like when you were younger, like it makes this cloud of like it's just dust, like it just kind of suspends in the air for a little while if you use enough of it. Or you could like push the thing in. We used to do that. Goes everywhere.
It's great if you're going through a laser cord. You know how in the cartoons it's always like they get the powder to like see where the lasers are.
Yeah, but like we know how to rob the place now. Yeah, so.
Oh man.
And then they end up with lung problems because talc. We'll come to that. No, but if they're using this, they'll have that notable cloud. The fine substance makes, it'll literally stay in the air of that same room for most of the day. If you're using it that much, like you're constantly using it, it's going to be kind of suspended in the air a lot of the day. The problem is not technically with the talc itself, but the fact that it is often mined with asbestos and is easily contaminated with asbestos, this natural but toxic substance. It's also natural, but it's toxic. And we've covered asbestos in an episode or two already, but just for a quick review, it was once widely used in building materials because of its incredible, heat resistance quality. There was it Charlemagne? Was this ancient leader, Charlemagne? He had like a tablecloth. It was made of asbestos, and they would literally just throw it in the fire as a cleansing thing, and they would bring it back out. Like that's how fire retardant and heat resistant it was. Like, they would just do that. So
it doesn't burn.
Yeah, I'm sure they might have had some effects from that later, but yeah. So it's been in use for a long time. Asbestos has use of asbestos for construction, clothing, kitchenware, and numerous other purposes. It just goes back to ancient times. We're talking like 4,500 years of use of this stuff. And, there's even evidence linking it back to this mysterious lung disease in the 1st century AD, which was noted by the scholar Pliny the Younger. He wrote about this lung disease coincidentally affecting slaves that mined the mineral around the industrial area, the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the mining and production of asbestos products rose a good 800,000%. Like, it was a lot. English doctors began to notice foreign bodies in the lungs of deceased textile workers and higher mortality rates, with lung scarring present among those working in these factories. And so when you start making more of this stuff, like to that degree, like it's risen that much, the production has, you're going to see more cases of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
That they didn't know was directly tied to it at the time. So it was not until 1930 when Dr. E.R.A. Merriweather published his notable report on the dangers of working with or around asbestos, showing there to be a direct link between inhalation and the lung scarring disease asbestosis. Now, I'm sure there was plenty of speculation because it's like, okay, these miners are around this stuff
all the time
and they all have similar lung issues. This is happening. Something is connected. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there was some speculation already, but he was able to prove a direct link. In the early 1940s, the inhalation of asbestos fibers was determined by U.S. researchers to cause lung cancer. And, then it would go on to be found as a cause for mesothelioma and even ovarian cancer, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Even more troubling is the fact that it only takes like a minute amount. It could take a very small amount to cause these illnesses leading to death. And you wouldn't know it. And you may not even know it until years later. Like it's continuing to irritate those tissues. And they're, asbestos fibers, they're incredibly long lasting and they can significantly scar and damage tissues like the lungs and reproductive tissues. Now, of course, when they started looking at ovarian, they're like, how in the world is it going from their lungs to their ovaries? How is that happening? Because they're only thinking about people breathing it in.
Yeah.
But like I said, we'll cover why it's also causing ovarian cancer too in just a little bit. Just living near a mining site or even being married to one of the miners, like you don't even have to go there. It still puts you at significant risk as the surrounding air itself just may have the mineral suspended in it. Now, the minerals finally phased out over time, beginning in the 1970s. It feels like it takes a long time for dangerous things to get removed.
Yeah.
It just does because there are people who are fighting to keep them because it makes them money. In 1989, the EPA issued the asbestos ban and phase-out rule to prohibit most asbestos products, but the ban was actually weakened in 1991 via numerous legal battles started by companies wanting to still use the stuff because it's cheaper, even if it kills people in the long run. In 2024, and I'm like, you got to know you're going to get sued too eventually. You're just going to wait for the next management can take that. Okay. In 2024, though, the EPA stated it was installing a complete ban on ongoing import and use of chrysotile asbestos, which is the only kind that has been in use still. And that's at least in America.
Yeah.
Okay. So talc is often mined near asbestos and is often contaminated with asbestos when it is brought in to be used. And asbestos causes lung damage and cancers. Great. So in 1922, the first problem arose with baby powder that at least we knew of. Babies could apparently grab the bottles of powder and pour it on their faces or spray it in their puff it in their faces, which could actually cause significant airway obstruction and asphyxiation, which honestly, you should really keep a lot of things like it. It's hard because babies can get into anything, but it's best to keep a lot of this kind of stuff away from them. But most people are looking at it like it's baby powder. It's not like medicine that I stick atop my fridge or in my cabinet, So, it looks like it would be safe, right? It's just powder. What's powder going to do? But apparently the particles are small enough to actually block the alveoli in baby's lungs. And this can lead to asphyxiation. This actually happened enough that by 1969 and again in 1981, the official journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics warned against the use of talcum powder around babies. According to the 1981 article, the National Poison Control Center documented 40 calls between January 1st, 1980 through June 30th, 1980, which was like a 6-month period. And it was concerning children under 5 years of age who had inhaled talcum powder. And 9 of those calls had come from emergency rooms, 5 from doctors' offices, 26 from mothers at home. So it was from various, from professionals and parents as well.
Yeah.
So Now, this issue became one of every 100 calls to poison controls after a while. And so Johnson & Johnson did modify the bottle's spout, to try to stop that from happening. And they did place a warning on the product to keep it away from children's nose and mouth, and, wrote on there that inhalation can cause breathing problems. But the risks really stayed the same. So then another issue slowly became known. Now, this issue, which I've already hinted at, became widespread, and the consequences were deadly in numerous cases, especially because Johnson & Johnson wanted to ignore it completely for a long time. Now, as I mentioned, the trouble with talcum powder is that contamination with asbestos, that it's mined in or with or near. And again, it only takes a small amount of asbestos to cause these serious problems. You wouldn't know until later a lot of the time. So in 1953, a doctor in London discovered that women with asbestosis were also suffering from some kind of cancer within the abdomen. Now, this turned out to be ovarian cancer. Thousands of autopsies at different hospitals showed asbestos in lung tissue. So this is starting to be this is a lot. They're starting to notice this is different than the norm. Something's going on. And this was all due to the huge growth in its production, of course. And they were using it in everything from insulation, clothing, toys, even. So talc is very much like asbestos in its chemical ingredients. It just differs in other conditions in which it's made in, like the temperature, pressure, that it takes to be made. And with asbestos, the toxicity is not so much the chemical as it is how irritating it is to the tissues. It just sits there and continues to irritate, and then tumors can grow and all that as well. So it can cause permanent and exacerbating damage. Now, by the 1960s, it could be said that nearly half of New Yorkers had asbestos in their lungs, given recent autopsy reports.
Yikes.
Now, looking back, it makes sense, again, for the men working near anything with asbestos in it, but why were women who were primarily at home being affected?
Right.
Yeah.
They're not around it all day.
Yeah, so it's where is it coming from in them? How are they being exposed to it?
Yeah.
A survey was conducted to try and find an explanation based on what's similar between them all. Is there a certain product that they're using? And turns out nearly all of them used talcum powder on a daily basis. In 1968, there was a researcher at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. His name was Dr. Arthur M. Langer, and he decided to test a theory. So he just went down to a store, bought some talcum powders of different brands, including J&J, and took them to the lab to run them through an electron microscope.
Yeah.
And he was able to quickly confirm that all of them were contaminated with asbestos.
Yikes.
Imagine being the one that'll be like, Eureka, I think I've figured out what is going on. But then also being like, I have to present this to somebody and things are going to get nasty.
Yep.
And, because you just know. So while this may have shocked him and other researchers and medical staff, Johnson & Johnson were actually not surprised. They shouldn't have been surprised. They already knew about the contamination. They had actually sent samples of their powder to a private lab back in 1958 to get advice on how to further improve the look and feel of it. According to them, the best option was to better purify the powder, as it did contain contaminants, mostly asbestos. So they knew it was in there.
Yeah.
There were also memos and messages sent within the company about concerns of the presence of asbestos and possible effects. Those at the top, however, constantly reassured others that since there was so little within the powder, it really shouldn't matter. Right?
There's not enough for it to be harmful.
Right. And they're not medical professionals. They would eventually hire medical professionals to kind of either lie on their behalf or talk them into what their version of the truth was. But yeah. Now, these higher ups were not, like I said, researchers or doctors. There is even documented suggestions of seeking a professional with regard to their defensibility in case of future litigation. So instead of looking for a professional to prove the powder was actually safe, they were looking out for a lawyer that could help them keep out of trouble should things go bad.
Yeah.
So it's we know where their priorities kind of were, right? The Tenebus Cancer Research Institute in Cardiff, Wales published a study in 1971 specifically about talc and it causing ovarian and cervical cancers in women. A new method had apparently recently been made to find asbestos in ovarian and cervical tumors. And when the process was done, researchers found a lot of talc at the very center of these tumors, suggesting it was honestly the primary cause of its growth. When Johnson & Johnson heard about this study, they were worried, not about the women with ovarian cancer or other cancers, but about what this meant for them widely. They're widely sold, baby powder. Like they were more worried about what it meant for them. And they made a lot of money on this product. And now its survival was being sort of threatened, right?
Yeah.
And also their reputation was being threatened, if you think about it, because it's like, if someone found out their products actually harmed people, they would no longer be the innocent baby company, safe, So they decided to get a second opinion, and they had the Research Institute send their samples to Mount Sinai Medical School. This is where Dr. Langer was. And he'd already found asbestos in talcum powders. So, he was told to look into this matter, but he would be watched by one of J&J's officials while doing so, right?
Okay.
Like it's the lab that's doing shady stuff.
Yeah.
And we got to watch them.
Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd be offended, to be honest. I'm like, seriously? But yeah. And this official was supposed to write back about the process that he observed too. Now, Dr. Langer sent J&J a letter in November of 1971 confirming that he too had found talc in the tumor cells and also asbestos. So it gets even worse. He found even more. When looking at slides of Johnson & Johnson's baby powder samples, he found similar mixes of talc and asbestos. And he wanted to publish these findings, but J&J strongly discouraged him, as company documents have since shown that they tried to discourage him from doing that. They didn't want him to do that. Now, Dr. Langer and his superior, Dr. Selikoff, did share these results with the top environmental official in New York City, likely suggesting that this was the reason for so many autopsies showing asbestos, in residents. It's not just coming from the mines. It's not just coming from, it is coming from insulation work and stuff. And that's a problem. But there, for those who don't seemingly have any connection to asbestos, this could be where that's coming from.
Yeah.
So a press conference was held June 29th, 1971, during which it was announced that 2 brands of cosmetic talc products contained asbestos. The brands were not named, but New Yorkers were asked to stop using talc-based powders in general. Well, J&J decided to put out a false statement soon after, stating, "Our 50 years of research knowledge in this area indicates that there is no asbestos contained in the powder manufactured by Johnson & Johnson." Just an outright lie. They just lied completely.
Yikes.
They could have said, there is a small amount and we're working to verify what amounts, if any, are safe because we care about our customers.
Right.
They could have said something like that, right?
But no.
They went with, not me. Just not a speck of asbestos here. We don't know what you're talking about. Right? Yeah. So just lied. And it gets worse. So hang in there. The FDA did open an investigation themselves in 1971, but as I've mentioned before, they didn't have much power, authority, or money in comparison with J&J, especially back then. And that should not matter, like I've said, but it apparently does even today. And the FDA themselves called a meeting that August, inviting various companies, including J&J, Pfizer, some others. They invited scientists, including Dr. Langer and his colleagues. And they also invited some other government agency officials, including the Bureau of Mines and NIOSH, which is a health and safety institute, to look at basically methods that could be used to determine minor amounts of asbestos-like materials in talc, with specific focus on cosmetics, because they knew something was going on and they needed to start somewhere.
Yeah.
It was also an opportunity to discuss allowable amounts of the stuff that should be allowed in these products. Of course, nothing of note seemed to come from this meeting. I don't know exactly what all they talked about, but nothing got done. And the FDA instead later hired Professor Seymour Lewin from New York University that December to analyze talc in consumer goods like cosmetics. Now, we've already discussed several studies now. People are doing study, and no one communicates well with each other. So it's now they're doing another one.
Yeah.
So anyway, that next fall, they had a conclusion out of 102 samples containing talcum powder, about 40% were contaminated with asbestos, including J&J's baby powder and their shower-to-shower products. These are like body powders that have the talc in it that people use for chafing and to absorb moisture, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, that's NIOSH, also did their own study around the same time, and their conclusions were based on electron microscopy showing possible asbestos fiber contamination in 9 popular baby powders. And it is good that they're doing these different like tests and stuff because they're doing different methods of testing. So that, I guess, that helps too in the long run. But it just feels like when reading about this, it's like you just see so many people doing test after test after test.
Yeah.
But then like when you get a conclusion, you get findings, it's like back to square one, it feels like. It's like, what the heck? But the FDA gave these findings to J&J and other companies, but they did not share them publicly. A J&J official wrote back saying that it was impossible to remove all asbestos from talc and that there was no evidence that small amounts of asbestos in talc specifically hurt people, even though it's known that even small amounts do hurt and even kill people.
Yikes.
It was definitely known by this time that does actually kill people. So, I mean, just the gall.
Yeah.
Now, J&J, I keep going from J&J to Johnson & Johnson, but same thing. Okay, J&J, then hired a dermatology professor from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine to test their powders on rabbits and humans. Specifically, what would happen if they were injected with it, which is really weird.
Yeah.
Really weird. Specifically, yeah, like the guy doing this test, his name was Dr. Albert Kligman. He had worked for J&J before, and he had a history of unethical studies, like bad stuff. Some of these studies that he had done involved testing products on African-American prisoners and mentally disabled children. And he would go on to do this particular test also on African-American prisoners alongside rabbits. Like he just had a dark history of this kind of testing.
Yeah.
And I won't go into detail about his results because it's not good. But J&J has since apologized for supporting the study for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
We're safe, but we do some shady studies.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes me think maybe you're not so safe. Still, more studies were done proving the presence of small amounts of asbestos. Like, we get it. It's there. One report sent to J&J had specific wording removed by the company with a handwritten note on the original stating, "Do not use this report." They literally doctored a report and tried to get rid of the original one. Yeah. So they doctored a copy of the report and basically stated that there's no asbestos found in samples. A whole lie. Meanwhile, the administrator at the New York City Environmental Protections Administration, that's the one that Langer and his colleagues had sent their report to specifically, and then they had that meeting and stuff. He noticed that things are going nowhere with this issue, and he called reporters for the New York Times and started naming the powders that he had been told had asbestos. And honestly, if you can't get anybody else to do anything, you tell a reporter, get it out in the news. A lot of times that does help because, now the public does know about things. This really throws a wrench in things for the company trying to do damage control. Right. Yeah. And it worked somewhat, but once he told them about this, and he did say that one of these powders was from J&J, a J&J official was made to call the FDA in a rage, and he cited the doctored report that they had sent stating that there was no asbestos. Literally the one that lied.
Right.
They were like, we did this and we're going to cite this information even though we know it's a lie. And it hadn't helped that the New York City environmental administrator, he kind of exaggerated the original study numbers. So it kind of made his own statements seem a bit untrustworthy too. But the FDA called the New York Times and instructed them to fix the story because they were seeing the doctored reports that J&J had made. So the corrected story the next day was titled, "Talc Warning is Labeled False." So there's so much back and forth, right, going on.
What do you believe?
The FDA was dragged around by the more powerful corporation, J&J, who would only go to lie more about how they knew their talc products were safe. They would try to prove that their mines were asbestos-free as well, saying that they were the cleanest out there. Now, this would backfire as well in the end, Politics were involved, of course. Each election, separate parties would argue about stuff they honestly knew nothing about. But it always makes good television to argue about such matters, whether you're smart on the topic or not. And so honestly, like things like the FDA and a lot of these regulatory bodies, they're kind of held in the air when it comes to elections. Like whoever wins, there's going to be different options there.
Right.
So it kind of depends on what goes on. The FDA's ability to regulate unsafe medications, it was constantly up in the air.
Right.
Like people were like, yeah, we want them to regulate unsafe medications because there are some unsafe if there's no regulation of it, people can put anything out there. And then there were others that were like, no, we don't want to do that. I'm not sure exactly why. It might have something to do with control or the demonizing of like regulatory bodies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there could be multiple reasons between the two. But finally, change came after the sulfanilamide disaster in 1937. And we've covered this in another episode, but this left at least 73 people dead. More are likely. This was when an antibiotic at the time was the elixir sulfanilamide was distributed from this Tennessee pharmacy after it was mixed with diethylene glycol, which is an antifreeze. Yeah. Which is deadly. The guy that made this elixir, he did not intend for it to be deadly. He didn't intend for it to be toxic like it was. It was soon realized that if there had been a stronger regulatory agency to block such dangerous medications, however, this would not have happened because there was nobody testing to see if there was anything dangerous in these medications. So by 1938, the Food, Drugs, and Cosmetics Act was passed, which required drug makers to get FDA approval before selling new medications. Now, it still did not have the authority to make sure drugs were effective. So you could still sell ineffective drugs, but the main thing now was making sure they were at least safe, right?
Yeah, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, so you could still, sell some snake oils as long as it didn't kill somebody, but there you go. You could still scam people. And people still get scammed, by supplements and stuff they find online that are, just different stuff. So that does still happen. Honestly, if somebody's trying to tell you like about a health thing and they're not even in the health field, especially, and they're also selling something on their page, that's a sign. Don't, do your research. Don't get into that. Now, later, when the thalidomide disaster occurred, this is when women were taking those anti-nausea meds, and then they realized that it caused birth defects, really bad birth defects, stillborn babies. It was bad. But the FDA was actually credited with saving a lot of Americans such grief because it had not approved the medication. Like only a little bit it got into America. I think some drug companies had given some to doctors to give their patients to try, but the FDA had not approved the medication for sale, basically. But they were actually, was credited for saving a lot of Americans from that. And so they were finally given authority to test for medication effectiveness in 1962. And when this happened, a third of medications on the market at the time were removed because they just didn't need to be there. While cosmetics was included in this kind of regulatory authority, like they had a cosmetics office, so to speak, most were not really concerned about this side of things at this time because especially when the baby powder situation was going on, because most people didn't believe cosmetics could really kill people, even though we know, like looking back, like women used to put belladonna in their eyes, lead was in makeup. We know these things, but I guess people don't look at baby powder and think poison. But I don't know, like looking back at the Victorian stuff, it's like, oh no, there was a lot of stuff that was poisonous. But most just didn't think about it. So there was all this back and forth still going on. The agency actually started setting some rules on the matter in 1973. They were looking to install testing that would make sure talc products were 99.99% asbestos free, because knowing what they knew about asbestos, they knew it's just toxic. Talc companies and cosmetics agencies in general were just ticked about this, and they were determined to fight such a standard, because to do such a thing, like they claimed that they couldn't do that, first of all, but to do such a thing would honestly cost them a lot of money and reputation, probably. That particular proposal of testing actually got thrown out from the cosmetics office of the FDA, because they could ask this of them. They still had no legal authority, and they really didn't have much support, like I said, because people didn't really think baby powder or cosmetics were really that harmful. But better methods of testing for asbestos were made as time elapsed, of course, and the FDA kept prodding at, J&J and be like, hey, it's us again. J&J kept finding ways to get out of the need for better testing and regulation. And since they're the ones with the most money, of course, they're going to find a way. And one way they did this was to create their own way of testing that was later found to actually not pick up some forms of asbestos. And I am not cool with drug companies having their own ways of testing things. I don't like that. I'd rather, I think it should be a third party testing thing going on, in my opinion. I don't think it's so you make the drug and you make the testing.
Yeah.
You could say anything if you wanted to. And I know, I'm not trying to be all conspiratorial or, conspiracy theorist here, but it's just knowing that companies like this have lied in the past. They make a lot of money on some of these drugs. And there are times where things are called off the market because they find out later there's an issue they didn't know about. And I get that. You didn't know about it.
A long-term effect.
You're dealing with something. You're dealing with it now. Great. We want to make sure that that's going on too.
Right.
But I do think testing of these drugs should definitely be done outside of the business creating them. But just like I don't agree with hospitals and health insurance companies being owned by the same people. That's it's just I don't like it. I don't like it. It's all about money, and I don't know.
And not about the care.
Yeah, that kind of stuff really bothers me. Or if you are going to have your own testing, you should at least also have third-party testing that is listed. Do your own for your own quality control, but somebody else should be
testing it for other stuff.
So basically, J&J created this own test, and it wasn't sensitive enough or effective really to pick up asbestos, and they kind of knew that. But it suited their arguments, and it kind of got the FDA off their backs for a bit.
Right.
And so the back and forth situation continued on, but so did science and researchers like Dr. Langer and his colleagues over at Mount Sinai, who were like, we're not going to let this go. And for a long time, research conclusions were met with in-person meetings with J&J officials, a lot of intimidation tactics, letters with, pressuring redactions or corrections, a lot of bullying going on too, bribery and things like that. In 1982, for instance, Dr. Daniel Kramer, who is a reproductive biology and OBGYN professor at this time, he published a study in the major medical journal called Cancer, this is just called Cancer, that showed women who dusted their private areas, the perineal areas specifically, with talc had a 92% increased risk of ovarian cancer. That's a pretty big finding.
Oh, yeah.
Huge. J&J were mad again. And told the press that, no, this is all inconclusive, kind of as a way to remedy their situation in the short term. They also sent officials to speak with Kramer, to speak with him, right? And try to get him to change his mind on the matter. Yeah. Even though he's the scientist that did the study. But yeah, Kramer did not back down from his results, but he agreed to make no further statements or give any interviews about it. In the early 2000s, researchers at the World Health Organization International Agency for Research on Cancer found that those using talc products in this way had a 30 to 60% increase of chance in ovarian cancer. And then those that did not, obviously.
Right.
Now, this is a huge deal because these guys are the last word when it comes to whether something's cancerous or not. Right? They are respected. People are they listen to them.
Right.
A former president of the American Epidemiological Association, Roberta Ness, testified that these studies suggested that Johnson's baby powder, specifically called them out, contributes to about 2,500 women in the U.S. being diagnosed with ovarian cancer every year and 1,500 women dying. This is just the ovarian cancer portion of things, right?
And not all the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, J&J was not the only company using talc contaminated with asbestos. Many were, including one called Engelhard, who sold talc for various purposes, commercially and industrially. The difference here, however, was Engelhard was kind of more so in denial about their talc being a health issue. As far as I know, J&J is older and they've already seen several studies at this point. That is until their own research director, Glenn Hemstock, swore in a deposition that the men pulling this talc out of their mines were falling prey to serious lung issues. A study co-sponsored by Harvard University and NIOSH found that between 1970 and 1978, Engelhardt's miners lost significant lung function, worse than effects of aging plus cigarette smoking combined would have caused. Soon after this, Engelhardt sent weekly samples to Georgia Institute of Technology, where, they have some really sensitive testing equipment. And they did this for 15 weeks straight. They just wanted to, I guess, really be sure. Right. And all results came back for asbestos. And this would be the beginning of the end, not just for Engelhard, but for J&J. Because the same mines that Engelhard are using used to belong to J&J.
There it is.
So, this is where I think we'll stop, because there's a lot to discuss in terms of lawsuits, and one lawsuit kind of becomes another, and it just, once things start to fall into place. Yeah. And I think that'll be good for next week.
Yeah.
Or, next episode.
Yeah.
So, because we're probably, I don't even know where we're sitting at time wise, but I feel like I've talked a lot.
Like I need to give my voice a rest.
So
same.
Anyway, but thank you guys for listening. We will continue this crazy little story, which honestly kind of gets crazier on our next episode with J&J, because they've got some other stuff, not just talc in their closet. So.
Right.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that, and let me know, what you guys think so far. Let us know if there's any particular scandals that you think of when it comes to Johnson & Johnson, or any pharmaceutical companies. This is all public information, by the way. So Johnson & Johnson, don't be sending no officials to bully me, okay? Don't come knocking on my door, because all of this is public. Just saying. Anyway, with that, we will see you guys next episode.
Bye.
Bye.